What if the speed of light was 30 miles an hour?
What if Earth had two suns?
Which cereal mascot would win in a
What
fight?
if everyone lived underground?
What if it
What
rained
if money
food?
grew on
What
trees?
if pigs could fly?
I don't know if that would actually happen.
It's much easier to store a unicycle than to store a horse.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show where we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host, Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee and Ben Storms. Say hi, guys.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Ben.
Guys, you have made me watch a movie, which is not what I usually do with my time, because we have a whole bunch of movie-related questions today, all related to Mr. Tom Cruise.
Did you actually watch the movie?
I did actually watch the movie.
Ooh, special occasion.
Oh, did you watch your movie, Chris?
No, I didn't.
I hadn't watched mine either.
I'd already seen it like a billion times.
To explain what we did is we all picked a Tom Cruise movie and did a question based around said Tom Cruise movie. I had actually seen my movie before. But there were many very famous movies that I'm like, oh, I should probably have seen more of these.
Tom Cruise has been in a lot of movies.
He's prolific.
We've done this once before with Keanu Reeves. I think this is the second time we've done this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I didn't rewatch The Matrix for that one and got a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, you really did. It was actually
Yeah.
pretty impressive how many things you got wrong.
Like, with the mechanics of how the Matrix worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the big picture stuff like that you would get from watching the movie then. But I'm like, I've seen I was like so obsessed with The Matrix like back then. I was doing all my cool, making all the punchy sound effects. I'm like, I know this thing, but that was my, preteen, whatever that movie came out, filled brain. God, I hope I didn't date myself there. And by that I mean, I hope I wasn't making cool Matrix noises when I was too far into my mid-teens. But yeah, no, we have some cool questions. We each picked a question based on the movie, so we're doing 3 different questions. Ben, why don't you go ahead and get us started, because I don't have anything else to explain, and I'm stuck.
Yeah, that's fair. So I took a crack at Top Gun. Top Gun, if you're not familiar with it, is a movie about planes and the people who fly them. It's from 1986. Specifically, it's about Navy fighter pilots who fly the F-14A off of an aircraft carrier. Obviously starring Tom Cruise, also has Val Kilmer in it, and also other actors, but those are the main 2 ones that I knew about. So they're the ones I'm going to mention.
And a new one just came out.
The new one just came out, and although it hasn't come out when we're recording this, from what I understand, it's pretty good. So I probably have seen it by the time this episode comes out. And hopefully I think it's pretty good, but I'm not recommending it yet because I haven't seen it. So if it's good, I recommended it. If it's not, I said it was bad. Just go with that. Anyway, Top Gun. So I was looking for a Top Gun question. I couldn't think of any for a while because it's not a particularly fantastical movie. It's just kind of about the interpersonal relationships of fighter pilots.
We already know it's possible for planes to fly. So
Yes, that is one that we have not actually covered on the show, but has been demonstrated many times in my own life and probably most people's lives as well.
Excuse me, I did an episode about sharks flying planes, so
You're right.
give us some credit.
We actually have technically covered that on this show as well. You're right.
Answer, yes, sharks can fly planes.
There we go. So, ironically, it's funny you bring that up because I actually wound up going in a somewhat similar direction because all the characters in the movie, being fighter pilots, have call signs, right? So, a call sign is just like a cool nickname that pilots call each other for, communication purposes. It's easier than saying someone's actual name to call them, for example, Maverick, Tom Cruise's character's call sign. So the question I decided to answer was, what if the Top Gun pilots were actually literally their call signs?
Oh my.
With the sort of sub-questions of, 1, how well could they fly an F-14A Tomcat? And 2, whether or not they're flying their F-14A Tomcat, how effective would they be at destroying an enemy jet? Because those are kind of their 2 main purposes of these fighter pilots, is flying jets and destroying other jets. So how good are they at these 2 tasks?
I can already hear how pleased you are with yourself for this question.
I am so... I told you guys this in advance. This is easily, without a doubt, and I know how big a statement this is, the stupidest thing I've ever done for this show.
In all of the 171 episodes. That's a lot of episodes. 0
question. Dumbest thing I've ever done. We're starting with Tom Cruise's character. Tom Cruise's call sign is Maverick. So first I had to figure out what actually is a Maverick. The definition is one who is unconventional or does not abide by the rules. But the actual source of the word is a guy. It's this guy, Samuel Maverick, who was a 19th century rancher, lawyer, and politician in Texas, back before Texas was actually part of the U.S., during like the Texas Revolution. And the origin of the word maverick, how we use it now, is that he refused to brand his cattle. And he said that he didn't brand his cattle because he didn't want to inflict pain on them. But a lot of other ranchers thought that his actual motivation was that let him just say that any unbranded cattle he found were his and he could claim them. But there was also a lot of accounts of his, like, you know, life that basically said that he didn't really care about ranching at all and did a really bad job growing his herd ever. So it probably wasn't that. He was probably just lazy and didn't want to brand them. That's kind of where the word comes from, is that it's someone who kind of like goes against established norms.
What a lame story to have that cool of a thing named after you.
I know. Fun fact also, his grandson was another politician who created the word gobbledygook. So you got that, you know, it sort of runs in the family. I didn't get the full story on that one. I'm sorry. That one I just saw on the Wikipedia page. But he was a pretty cool guy. He was one of the signers of the Texas Declaration of Independence. He was a landowner in and around San Antonio. He was actually at part of the Battle of Alamo. And then he wound up serving on the Texas House of Representatives and eventually as mayor of San Antonio as well. And when he was building his house in 1852, he found 13 of the 21 cannons used during the Battle of the Alamo that had been like buried by retreating Mexican soldiers. And they actually were donated to the Alamo Museum, where they're still on display. So if you ever go to the Alamo.
He was like, oh, these cannons, I don't see a brand on them. These are mine.
I had the exact same thought. I was like, oh yeah, this tracks. This makes sense.
Maverick has made it big by just like being like, wow, does nobody want this? Okay, I'll take it.
Exactly.
Mayor of San Antonio, does nobody else want this?
Yeah.
I'll just grab it.
Why not? Sure. That's a nice declaration there. I may as well sign it. Yeah, come on.
Texas House of Representatives, I'm in.
So our important questions here, right? Could he fly an F-14A? Probably not. He's from the 1800s. However, I will say that he is a human man, which puts him surprisingly far ahead on this list, actually, in terms of being able to fly a jet. So he would not know how, but he does at least possess all of the necessary, like, limbs and general intelligence to fly a jet. So just drop him in it? Probably can't, but not too far off. He's at least, you know, ergonomically there. Could he destroy an enemy jet? If he was in an F-14, probably not. Once again, I don't think he could fly a plane just naturally. But as mentioned, he did have 13 cannons. And although it wouldn't be easy, if you could hit a jet with a cannon, the cannon would win that fight. So he probably would not be as good as Tom Cruise's character Maverick, but he would actually be surprisingly decent in our two categories of being able to fly an F-14 and destroy an enemy jet. So not too bad. Moving on, we're going to go to Goose, who was Maverick's radar intercept officer and best friend. You know what a goose is, I hope, I would guess. If you don't, it's a roughly 10-pound, surprisingly aggressive bird.
That honks.
I'm not going to lie. Yeah, they honk. They do honk. That's true. I don't really have any other goose facts. I figured that goose on its own probably spoke for itself. You know, I think that's just fair. If you have questions, they're on the internet. You can find them. They're birds. So, on to our important questions. Can a goose fly an F-14A? No. Can a goose destroy a jet? This is where we get to sort of the interesting question. There's actually a lot of research on this. Not gooses specifically, but birds in general, because that is actually a, you know, reasonably big threat for planes, is hitting a bird in flight. And specifically, I found an article from the Wildlife Society Bulletin from 2000 called Ranking the Hazard Level of Wildlife Species to Aviation, where they basically, they found a database that just had reported incidents of planes hitting wildlife, along with the reports that said it damaged the wildlife and what the actual cost was when that was available. Geese were not the most damaging wildlife, but they were the third most, so they're actually pretty damaging. I'm going to tell you guys right now, you will not guess what the most damaging wildlife in terms of being struck by planes was. I can guarantee it. I will give you each 3 guesses, and you will not guess the actual answer.
So it's got to be a weird one.
Does that imply that it's not bird? It's not a bird. Is this a list of birds or a list of animals?
I said wildlife.
Okay.
Wildlife. Salmon.
No, that... Okay.
I know salmon as a guess.
Man, I know I said it was weird, but you may have been going a little too far there, dude.
Is it bats?
It is not
no,
bats.
They They know the heck to stay away from those.
Yeah, they have sonar. Like they did see that coming, you know?
Is it somehow squirrels?
Mosquitoes.
It is not squirrels or mosquitoes. I don't know how either of those would work.
Me neither, but you said it's weird, so I'm not gonna guess any freaking birds.
Okay, you're thinking a little bit too weird, maybe. Just like slightly less weird.
Owls.
No, it was kind of weird, I guess. It's like, okay, Marcus, do you have anything?
Pigeons.
No.
As a bird.
You just okay, weird. This segment didn't go as I thought. It was somehow anyway, it's deer. Inexplicably, it's deer. And I'm guessing it has to entirely be on like takeoff and or landing.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Otherwise,
It's Santa Claus's deer.
Santa Claus is very sad. Yeah. But no, yeah. Apparently, deer in terms of, and like to be fair, the way they measure it was just based off of like how many strikes were reported versus how many noted damage. And obviously, if you hit a deer with a plane, that's going to do a lot more damage than hitting, like, for example, an owl, which is listed in this list, Chris, with a plane.
How high on the list?
12th in number of strikes. Pretty uncommon in damage. So 171 strikes and only 22 with damage.
Can you scroll down and get us a stat on salmon?
Salmon were not listed. The only other non-bird animal on here is I just want to make sure this is true. Coyotes apparently. 49 times. And somehow 4 of them damaged the plane. How does that work? You know what? I'm not going to dwell on that. Point being, of the 532 times that a goose struck a plane, 283 noted damage. I don't know how much damage. I do know that generally the way that a bird can really mess with a plane, particularly a jet, is by going into the engine and jamming it and causing it to, not jet, I guess.
I love how so many of your sentences start off so confident, and then on the simplest bit at the end, you fall apart.
Yeah, it's a problem. Anyway, point being, can a goose destroy an enemy jet? Yes, it can. I'm actually more confident in the goose than in Samuel Maverick. So, we got that. Finally, last of the pilots we're going to talk about today is Iceman, who is Val Kilmer's character, who is Maverick's rival at the Top Gun Academy. There's really only 2 ways to take this Iceman, literally. One is a cryogenically frozen man. The idea of cryogenic freezing is to freeze someone, generally someone with like a terminal disease or something, so that in the future they can be thawed out and cured of whatever disease they have that we can't cure now. And the advantage here is that man could be anyone. It could be a fighter pilot, that would be perfect. Just thaw him out and you throw him in there and he goes and it's perfect. One problem with that is that current cryogenic freezing technology straight up does not work, because the way that we freeze a human down to that temperature just like destroys the tissue. It like obliterates the cell membranes. There is not a way to like freeze someone currently that keeps them intact. There was a story in the article I was reading that said that they did an experiment in a lab where they just tried to basically freeze an entire pig heart. They had a frozen pig heart. They were trying to bring it back to a not frozen temperature fast enough to bring it back to life without it going through the whole like thawing process, and literally the heart cracked in half. It's not good. It does not work, the technology. So what we have is just a dead man, and a dead guy cannot fly an F-14A or destroy an enemy jet by any means that I can think of. But the other possibility that we could have, taking Iceman literally, is there's a character from X-Men named Iceman, who's the guy who can make ice. You may have seen him in some sort of X-Men material before. Who, 1, I believe, has flown the X-Men plane before, so pilot. And 2, he's also a super powerful mutant and can create ice, and is apparently, like, basically unkillable. He can, like, turn himself into ice and then reform from that ice, even if it shatters. I don't know. It seems really broken, but that's kind of how these things go.
Yeah, ice is pretty brittle.
But like then apparently he can be like a hard ice too. I don't know. It seemed very comics bullshit, but it was fine, whatever. Point being, if that is who Iceman literally is Iceman from the X-Men, he is far better than Val Kilmer. I'm going to put that out there right now. And would easily be the best of all these pilots at both flying an F-14A and destroying an enemy jet. So I guess in conclusion, if the Top Gun pilots were literally their call signs, they would generally be worse unless one of them is a mutant who can make ice and also fly planes.
Do you think Iceman will be disappointed that the team he gets sent off with includes a goose?
Yes, I would think so. That seems very likely. Yeah, so that's what I had. Marcus, what did you do?
Yeah, so the Tom Cruise movie that I picked was War of the Worlds, the 2005 Steven Spielberg remake, because that's the one he was in. If you have not seen War of the Worlds, this may be the least spoiler tag ever, because the original War of the Worlds came out in...
I mean, the book was...
It's an old book.
Yes, an old
1953
book.
film.
Yeah, and the book was definitely before that. I think there was a radio show between the book and the movie.
First serialized in 1897. So if you have picked up, if you've been waiting in a spoiler-free bunker for 130 years, turn off the podcast.
Yeah, it's literally public domain now. You have no excuse.
Anyhow, plot: aliens descend to Earth and start murdering a bunch of people with giant tripod robots. They're basically invincible, but then abruptly die because they can't handle the bacteria and microorganisms in the air, and they all just die with no input from anybody else. The movie just follows one deadbeat dad who, like, sort of takes care of his kids. I think he loses one of them. I was half paying attention when I rewatched the movie, but one of them I think went into the military and didn't come back. I don't know.
I remember a scene with a train that's on fire, and that's most of what I remember from that movie.
Which is great, because that scene has literally nothing to do with anything. Like, they're really just moving with a mass of people, and then a train just goes through super on fire.
And they keep moving.
And then they just keep walking. They literally ignore it and keep walking.
I remember Tom Cruise running a lot with people exploding into clothes around him.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah. That's true. Good movie.
But before I move on to my actual question, of course, every time I watch a sci-fi something movie, I'm going to fact check stuff. Did just one fact check for this one. In this movie, which is actually unique to the War of the Worlds storytelling, the robots, the giant tripods, were always in the Earth, and they just come and, like, basically shoot lightning down on one spot and then, like, shoot their little shuttle pod into the robot that's already underground, and then it pops up out of the ground. But basically, it, like, got reawakened by lightning strikes. So my question was, okay, so these things are, generally some depth into the ground. Would you be able to reactivate them with lightning? So I was curious to see how deep lightning penetrated into the Earth. And turns out it goes pretty far down. In fact, there have been reports of miners that are hundreds of feet underground feeling electric shocks from lightning strikes on the surface. Which I didn't see any miner deaths from getting directly electrocuted, because that would be, like, the most bullshit way to die. You're, like, 250 feet underground, you get, like, hit by lightning. Like, that's bullshit. But there have been deadly methane explosions caused by lightning penetrating into mines. Sometimes, like, it's a little tricky on how far is natural, like, in a natural, like, stone setting, because a lot of the travel in the mines is because there's a lot of, like, mine rails and wires and electrical equipment that gives it a more, like, a conduit path. But it seems like a good few hundred feet is what you can expect for lightning penetration into the ground. So, fact checked, fact approved, you could reactivate an old robot if lightning will do it. So, my question very simply was, okay, well, the aliens just went up and died. What would I do if I had a giant tripod? Let's start with the abilities of said tripod. Ability number 1, they're big. They're like 100 feet tall. Ability number 2, they can make a big noise. That alarm sound that apparently also is a creative choice between different remakes of the tripods on the different War of the World adaptations. Apparently one of them is just like a bunch of like high-pitched like screeching.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I'm like,
the Tom Cruise one was kind of more bwommy, right?
Yeah, it's like, and I think the book is like a loo, which would be like
right.
Would match that, like a deep like foghorn type sound almost.
Mm-hmm. They
are shielded from attack, so they shoot all these missiles and stuff, and they just hit like this force field around it. They have the what you guys mentioned before, I'm calling it the flesh beam, which I think is just a heat ray that vaporizes people but leaves like their clothes and stuff intact. It has like fertilizer arms and an extraction hose. So one of the things that they do with the people is that they like pick up the people and harvest them and then grind them into dust or, suck their blood out of them and then use that to fertilize this like red vines that they're letting grow around the planet. They're like almost like doing like a little bit of terraforming.
Fertilizer arms conjured a weird image.
A little bit, yeah.
It is weird. It's exactly as weird as your images, so good work. They can be underwater. There's a bunch that pop up from under the water. And in addition to their tripods, they have big 3 legs. They also have a bunch of little legs that descend down and, grapple people and pull them up into like a little containment unit. So what do I do in my real life with this giant tripod? There's a lot of options that you can do with just a big, old, powerful machine. So I wanted to look more at what made this robot unique, which I consider to be its many tentacles and its blood extraction capabilities. We're going to go back to the weird fertilizer extraction hose. Basically, it just is able to, like, it's a big long arm with like a little needle on it. It can stab something and drain the blood out of it. So what good is that in the real world? Turns out, blood can be valuable. For an initial point of comparison, human blood is worth about $1,500 a gallon, according to Google. If you ever need some cash, I guess. But that is not what we'll be harvesting. I don't know if we talked about this before, but horseshoe crab blood is one of the most valuable bloods, also one of the most valuable liquids, period, on the planet. Horseshoe crab blood is worth $60,000 a gallon. But why, though? So, horseshoe crab blood contains a special clotting agent. It's used in medical facilities to make a concoction called Limulus amoebocyte lysate, or LAL. LAL is cool because LAL lets you know whether a vaccine or medical tool is contaminated with bacteria, like E. coli or salmonella or something. And basically, if you introduce a drop of this LAL agent into a medical equipment you're testing, any bacteria, it'll form a jelly cocoon around like any bacteria in that sample to sensitivity of like 1 part in a trillion. Which is kind of neat, but do we really need to harvest horseshoe crab blood to do this? The alternative that they had was they would just inject the vaccines they were testing into like a huge number of rabbits and then see if the rabbits got sick. And this is just like, you can test one thing in one vial and it'll immediately tell you if there's, bad bacteria in it. So we are still using horseshoe crab blood today. Each year, the US harvests blood from about 600,000 horseshoe crabs for medical purposes. So we're going to see if we can get in on the supply side of this shindig and cash in on our horseshoe crab blood. The way they harvest them now is basically 2 main methods. One of them is literally just like hand harvesting them near the shore. Like you just have people that go around and pick them up off of the beach and the shallows and you collect them that way. And then the other is net trawling down at the sea floor. So you go out a little bit, you drop a net on the sea floor, you pick up everything and anything, and then you pick out the horseshoe crabs and throw everything else back, which of course is generally, it's still done, but it's generally not super eco-friendly. So what if we use our robot? Because 1, we can go underwater. 2, it does have flashlights. I didn't mention the flashlights, but it does have lights so you can find the horseshoe crabs. And then it can either pick up or just directly extract the blood without ever having to like leave or go to a lab or anything. You just have like all these tentacles doing your thing for you already. So I want to look at how many horseshoe crabs could I harvest with my giant tripod. The largest horseshoe crab population, I don't know if it's the world or the US, forgot to check, in Delaware Bay, where an estimated 725,000 horseshoe crabs live, which is great because that is a bit more than the annual demand. So if we can harvest the whole Delaware Bay, we can supply all the medical facilities with horseshoe crab blood. So let's say we can extract this blood continuously while our robot is going at a walking pace. A walking pace for a robot, if you scale off a human walking pace of about 4 miles an hour and kind of use the height as a scale factor, we're looking at about like 60 miles an hour, but I'm saying 40 because we'll be underwater. So can we find enough horseshoe crabs at that speed? Delaware Bay, while not huge, is not too small either. It has an area of about 750 square miles. If our search diameter is a 50-foot area around us and we're going 40 miles an hour, we can cover about 0.378 square miles per hour of crab searching, which means it'll take 1,984 hours to search the Delaware Bay, which if we're working 40-hour work weeks, adds up to 50 weeks. So amazingly, with my giant space alien robot and the whole world of possibilities, I've crafted myself a steady 9-to-5 with 2 weeks vacation in the year.
Nice.
But, of course, how much does it pay then? So how much blood am I getting from these 725,000 horseshoe crabs that I've harvested? When they extract from a horseshoe crab, they extract about 30% of the horseshoe crab blood, which generally leaves them okay. They say about like 30% of the crabs die in like the harvesting process, but they don't really check on the ones they release back in the wild. They're just kind of assume they're fine, and I'm going to meet that scientific consensus. But anyway, they take 30% of the horseshoe crab blood, which is about 300 milliliters of blood on average. If we nab all 725,000 crabs at 300 milliliters, we end up with 57,457 gallons of the stuff. So if you remember that I mentioned this blood is worth $60,000 per gallon, our annual salary for our 9-to-5 job is $3,447,445,283.27 per year. So it's going to be a wild 2-week vacation each year. And that's what I would do with a giant robot.
You wouldn't kill Tom Cruise. You wouldn't hunt him down.
No, they tried that and died, so I don't need to do that.
I mean, he does have a 2-week vacation.
I mean, I could hunt down Tom Cruise on my 2-week vacation, but he's pretty slippery. Also, like, he blew one of them up with grenades, so I'm like, what if I accidentally pick him up and accidentally put him in the basket, and he accidentally has grenades again, and then he throws them in, and then my whole, robot is dead. That's sad. Chris, what did you do? What did you do that's better? Did you hunt Tom Cruise to death?
I did not. So the movie that I did was Minority Report, which is a very good movie. It is from 2002. It's also a Steven Spielberg movie. And if you don't know anything about the movie, it's basically about like pre-crime. So they have these people that are like precogs, and they can like see crimes before they happen. And there's this whole organization that like arrests people before they actually commit the crime. And the main character is Tom Cruise, and his character's name is John Anderton. And one day, like, his face shows up in one of the precogs committing a murder, and he has to like figure out what's going on and like run from the authorities. And part of that, or a big part of the movie, is people being identified by their eyes. So this is demonstrated in one of the scenes where Tom Cruise is walking around, like, I think it's like a shopping mall or something, and there are cameras scanning his eyes as he walks, and he gets like personalized ads for him based on that. And then he also has to like scan his eyes to get into work and stuff. But the thing is, most of the movie, he's a fugitive on the run. So what he ends up doing in the movie is he needs to like change his eyes, and he ends up getting like an eye transplant, or like removing his eyes and taking someone else's eyes. And he assumes the role of Mr. Yakamoto. And then there's this whole scene with like spider robots while he's like blindfolded, and he's trying to like navigate without his eyes and stuff. It's really intense, and it's a good movie. But I wanted to see how realistic this actually is. So I started with like the identifying people with their eyes thing. There are actually a couple methods to do this. So the first one is retinal scanning. So an eye's retina gets blood from a complex system of blood vessels, and retinal scanning looks through the pupil of the eye into I think the retina is like in the back of the eye. So it looks through the pupil to see the retina, and then it analyzes the unique blood vessel patterns to identify someone. And the blood vessel patterns are actually not genetic. So like even identical twins will have unique patterns. And it's actually the most precise and reliable biometric other than DNA that we know of, at least. And the National Center for State Courts estimates that it has an error rate of 1 in 10 million. It's pretty good. And retinal scanning has been used by the FBI, the CIA, NASA, and in prison. So it's a pretty well implemented and like developed method. The second method is called iris recognition. So the idea is pretty similar. I think it's more widely used than retinal scanning. But the way it works is instead of looking at the patterns of the retina, it just looks at the patterns of the iris. The iris is like the color part of your eye. And there's like, if you zoom in on it, you can see all those like wavy pattern things.
Yeah, it's kind of gross when you get too close to those.
I think it looks cool.
It does look cool, but also it's like, it depends on the level of zoom, because it starts off like, eyes are beautiful. And you go a little closer, you're like, ooh, eyes are cool. And then you get a little closer, and you're like, ugh, eyes are kind of gross.
Yeah. I mean, eyes are gross. That is true. But iris recognition is also a very reliable way to identify people. And you can actually read the patterns from like a further distance than retinal scanning. And 1.5 billion people are actually enrolled in iris recognition systems. Apparently 1.2 billion of those people are citizens of India. So I guess India is like a big user of this, I guess. So yeah, those are the two methods. And clearly identifying people using their eyes has been real for a long time. And based on how it works in the movie, so like he's walking around a shopping mall and there's just cameras on the walls like taking pictures or like scanning people's eyes from a distance. I feel like they're using iris recognition, especially because when it happens, their irises light up. So I'm going to say that they were using iris recognition. So theoretically, if you replace your eye, then yes, you'd be able to elude the authorities because they wouldn't be able to identify you. In the movie, they replaced the entire eyeball. I want to see if there's such a thing in real life. So it's actually a pretty complicated thing, just because of the way the eye interacts with the brain and like all the nerves and stuff. But they are researching it. So Dr. Kia Washington has been researching methods for a whole eye transplant to restore vision in visually impaired people. It has not been successfully done yet, but she is still researching it, and she actually got a $6 million grant from the U.S. Department of Defense Joint Warfighters Program. So I guess there might be a thing in the future. I'm not sure, but nothing has happened yet. So I was like, okay, if you can't replace the whole eye, what are other like eye operations that you could do that could help? Really, the only current eye-related transplant that you can do is a cornea transplant. So the cornea is the clear layer that's in front of your iris. So like if you look at your eye from a profile, your eye is a circle, and then the cornea is like a little dome on the front of your eye. It like protects the iris. And the cornea has no pattern or anything on it. It's just transparent. So nobody uses the cornea to identify anyone. So it's not really useful in terms of what we want to do. So next, because there are no like ways to like transplant anything with the eye that could help, I looked at other options, and the natural option that I came up with are contacts, because you put them on your eye, it covers your eye.
Oh yeah, get some anime Sasuke Sharingan contacts.
Yeah. There's some pretty cool contacts out there. I hate the all black contacts. It just makes the white of your eyes all black. That's creepy. But yeah, so normal contacts shouldn't really impact the effectiveness of iris recognition just because they're see-through. I think it is a little more complex than that, and they do interfere a little bit, but for the most part, like, it's fine. The bigger thing is those color cosmetic contacts, because obviously it covers the iris. Now, in the movie, if it was retinal scanning, I don't think it really would affect this, because all the retinal scanning used to do is look through the pupil, and it doesn't cover the pupil. So it wouldn't be an issue if it was that. But I do think it's iris recognition. And in real life, this is actually this has a term. It's called iris spoofing, where you basically fake your iris, or you take someone else's identity using their iris pattern. And iris recognition technology is actually getting better. So you can read the iris patterns from a further distance now, but that also enables people, it makes it easier basically just to steal someone's iris pattern using the same technology.
Man, I'm already worried enough about people stealing my goddamn wallet. I don't need to worry about people stealing my eyeballs.
Yeah. I mean, you basically just have a camera from a distance and they can see the pattern if it's good enough, which is kind of scary. And this is actually a pretty big problem with iris recognition in general. They've been trying to solve this problem for a good amount of time. I found one paper where they were talking about advanced algorithms that can sort of identify a fake iris, but it wasn't really entirely reliable. And there really is no perfect solution right now. This is still a pretty big problem. Spoofing an iris is very easy to do, and the most common way to do it is with contact lenses. So, in conclusion, I don't know why Tom Cruise had to replace his whole eyeball. He could just put contacts in, and a quarter of the movie could have not happened. But whatever.
I also hadn't really thought about it until now, but why do they do eyeball scanning instead of just face scanning? Because we can already do that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think eyeball thing is more reliable, probably.
Probably.
Also, he does change his face in the movie too, so that
he does. That's part of the reason I was thinking about it, was that they already had that in there. So
why did he change his face? He could just put on a mask. Then the face recognition doesn't work anyway.
Yeah.
Dude, get some accessories.
You didn't have to get a whole head transplant.
Takeaways that Tom Cruise needs to goddamn accessorize. All right, well, that got very close. We got very close into eye surgery territory, which I was getting very uncomfortable very quickly. But luckily we segued into it, or just get contacts. So I was very happy about that. And with that sigh of relief, we can move into our Would You Rather segment of the show. Ben, are you ready for a Would You Rather?
Yes.
Would you rather slow down time or speed up time? I think time as a whole, like everything happens a bit
Right.
faster or everything takes a bit more time.
Including everything for you?
Everything for you, everything everywhere. Like the constant time, the rate that everything travels through time, I guess, is.
I guess your perception of time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, is everything slightly in slow mo or is everything just a bit faster?
And this is something that's just like a thing that we are making happen for the rest of time, not something we can control, right?
Yeah, let's go with that one. The other one might be an interesting question, but let's start with this one.
Yeah. Okay, so if it's going to be permanent. Oh, if it's going to be permanent.
I mean, this seems pretty clear to me.
All right, explain.
I would say slow time because, like, you have more time. You can process things, like everything, you live the same age to the same age, but you can just, like, process every situation better.
Yeah. You know, like you, even though you're, like, using reading as an example, you're reading at the same speed, but you're technically reading faster in terms of the overall world, right?
Yeah, like if you're about to get into a car crash, you can, like, process that you're going to crash easier, whereas if time is going faster, you probably crash.
You effectively get superhuman reaction speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't see the others. What if it was?
If it's controllable, things get a little bit different.
Yeah, let's say you can control either, and it's like half or I don't know, double, half or double.
Double? Yeah, half or double. So, if it's controllable, you technically still can have the reaction speed thing, but you have to be expecting something to happen, so it's not just like...
Not
you can
yeah, it's not
get
like a
out, it's
superpower.
Right. Exactly, yeah. Which is still good. And you can still do things like, you know, you can, if you're, you know, doing stuff for work, you can, like, type and read insanely fast and things, right? Like, that's all cool. But for speeding up time, it's not as cool still. It's still not as cool. It's more useful because you can, like...
skip plane rides.
Yeah, if you're like waiting for the bus, it takes half as long. This is really not worth giving up the slowing down time thing.
Yeah, no, I was like enticed by the speeding up for like because just I'm constantly distracting myself by doing other things. Like, well, if I just could like speed up the thing I'm supposed to be focusing on, I'd probably do a better job focusing on that thing. Like, oh, you know, I'll be like cooking or something, and I'll be like, oh, well, if I could just like speed this up a little bit, maybe I would actually like pay attention to my cooking and not just like get distracted and like start fiddling with shit and then messing up my dinner somehow.
I think you'll just be worse at cooking.
No, I'd be better. If cooking took half as long, I would be better at it. Because all you have to do is wait. But if you do stuff while waiting, you can mess with things.
I guess if you just like stick something in the oven, then yeah, all you have to do is wait.
Well, even like cooking stuff in the pan, like the hardest thing is like browning something. We're like, I'm gonna put it on this pan and I'm not gonna touch it for like 3 minutes, and it's exactly the wrong amount of time because it is long enough that you're bored and you're like just like staring at it and you get restless, but not so long that you can like leave. Also, your oven is, you know, there's fire in your kitchen. You should probably be around for it.
But I feel like if you can slow down time in your cooking, then you'd be able to process it fast enough that you could multitask. So while you're waiting for it to brown, you could do something else.
Also, we have very different cooking styles because when I'm browning something and it's taking 3 minutes, I am dancing around my kitchen going, the whole time. So, like, that's how I stay occupied. Yeah. Listen to that. Smell that.
Me and Sarah tend to cook together. Our cooking style is put things where they need to go, and then one of us leaves the room to like sit on a chair somewhere for no reason because we're both so bad at like just letting things sit. We're both so impatient while cooking.
Anyway, I agree with Chris. I think it'd be worse at cooking for things, but I don't know. I guess in that exact situation, yes, you're right. But
I don't know. I guess for me, it's like my initial gut reaction was, I feel like there's more times where I'm impatient than overwhelmed by how much time I have to do something.
I mean, is the fast time useful for anything other than if you're waiting?
No, I don't think it is.
Well, it makes like you get through bad situations and stuff faster. Like, I don't know.
I guess.
That feels like a subset of waiting.
It is a subset of waiting.
Yeah.
But we do a lot of waiting in our lives. You could be a really, really good truck driver because you could go twice as long as anybody else.
But you'd have a really slow reaction time then.
That's okay. You're just fucking in cruise control.
All right. I feel like I can make a decision here. on both versions of this question. Spoiler alert, it's the same answer, and it's slow down time.
Yeah, same for me.
Yeah, I'm also gonna go with slow down time, but for some reason it feels wrong. Like, it's logic, like it's like yes, begrudgingly yes, and I can't think of a single reason why it's not right, but at the same time, I don't know, just I feel like I want to speed things up.
I agree with you that I legitimately, when I was first like asking if it was something we can turn off and on, that I was like, oh, then there's actually a reason to pick going fast. And then I started about for like a second and I was like, there's not. There's really not.
Honestly, I kind of just want to challenge mode life and just be like, all right, let's see if I can do this, if I can handle this at 2x speed and see how it goes. Yeah, there you have it. If you had the power to speed up time, you wouldn't have to wait a whole week for us to release another episode. But actually, there's a workaround. If you go to our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals, and become a patron, become one of our good hypothetical pals, then you don't have to wait a whole week for another episode. There's a whole bunch of bonus episodes sitting there waiting for you in the Patreon for just $1 a month. And there's lots of awesome, cool things that we do in those bonus episodes. So go check that out. Also, it just directly supports the show, and that is very, very meaningful to us. If you want to non-financially help the show, times are tough. We get it. You don't have all the dollars to give to us. Give us a question. We love to get listener questions. Send us an email, absurdhypotheticals@gmail.com. Or if you're on YouTube, you can just leave it in the comments below. And we are happy to receive and answer listener questions, and we'd love to get some more. So that would be also a great thing that you can do to become part of the show forever. And as always, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review, tell your friends, get the word out, just help spread the good word of the show and get more people listening. Again, if you use one of our weird facts at a party and people are like, why do you know that? If your family is giving you judging glares for knowing so very many facts about flying planes and what geese can do to them, blame it on us. That way you are not embarrassed and more people can listen to our cool show. In any case, for all of us stuck in a normal time stream, we'll have to wait 1 week until we answer the following question. Which movie mentor would train the best hero?